Alrighty. It has been a while since we talked in person. Last time we addressed Nexus, letters, DBQs, and all that. Before we get into the thick of it, I'm DP with Veterans Network Champions Club VNCC, and I have a special guest with us today. I'll let her introduce herself and her organization.
I'm Tara with MRPY Professional Services. We provide Nexus letters.
And you're also a veteran. So we're not just talking claims. We've been through this process. We are part of this process. We are veterans ourselves. I'm an Army veteran and I have my organization.
I spent most of my time in the reserves, 12 years, and I was in a medical unit. And so we got to participate in local, regional, and international events. I was able to interact with a lot of other units and really see a lot of variety of what the military was across all branches, what units were comprised of, what medical limitations is, I would say that more so than anything, that most units who didn't have a medical unit attached to it or even a medic, sometimes it's just a medic, that's all they had. So there were a lot of things that opened my eyes as to how real medicine in the military went during my time there.
You're a medical provider too, so from there, you have the civilian side where you practice and you've been in that world and have a variety of experiences seeing all that. And that kind of brought up full circle for MRPY. So give us a little background on the medical side, what you've done there that kind of eventually led to MRPY.
Well, I got bored frequently. That's where a lot of how I ended up where I'm at ended up happening. I rarely stayed in a job more than 2 years. I frequently changed specialties. So I have experience in a lot of different medical specialties. And when I joined the military, it just pieces started to click and fall into place. And my last mobilization, I really got to see the lack of medical support that the units had. And I started to hear terms. I started to hear things, disability. Didn't really understand and know a lot about what that was. Connecting the dots at that point, right around 2015, 2016, just starting to really lean into what do I want to do with myself, and started to climb the corporate ladder within a hospital system. Hated it, just really felt overworked, underappreciated, and I really wasn't making a difference doing anything. And fell right into piecing this together with VA disabilities. This was initially supposed to just be a side job where I'd spend a little less time working in the hospital. And when I was able to see how much help we were able to give and what positive change we were able to make, it really just became more of a passion project and an addiction for the most part. I just really love helping veterans and really love that piece of I got you in the space that I know medicine, that I know medical evidence, and I can pull that together with the military understanding inside of it, that where I know exactly what you're going through. And even if you don't tell me, the lovely thing about when I talk to veterans, if you don't tell me all the struggles, I at least know the questions to ask you to say, you were infantry. Come on, tell me about these days. Tell me about these missions. Tell me about this activity. What was your training? I'm able to ask a lot of questions because I have at least a base of knowledge that is very different than most
what they did.
Understand it's not about pulling out questions or putting things into perspective that you're building a case. It's about asking the right questions to say, remember back when, and tell me more about that. And it's usually that, oh, I never thought about what that truly meant or what that truly did. I'm able to take that experience and pull it out of people to be able to put it on paper, which is really helpful.
And I think that's powerful too. I use the term that folks may know the movie Slumdog Millionaire. I don't know if you've ever seen it or not, but it's this whole concept of basically in India, this kid goes on who wants to be a millionaire and he knows all the answers. And they're trying to figure out how would he know that. And every question was tied back to a period of life, of something that happened in the slums, this experience, that experience. I used to make that example to say we have a very interesting path or background in that I did so many things. I taught, I was an air marshal, I worked in the government, I understand policy. So things that, to your point, they bored me. Then I switched somewhere else. Then I went somewhere else. And at face value, it seems like you did a lot of different things in the medical side too. But all of that gave you now the experience that when you come into this space, it's like yesterday you were telling me the fact that you literally did work with an ophthalmologist. You know certain things that the average medical person wouldn't know because you have such a diverse background, having have done so many things medically, because some people are very, I just did NICU, right? I just did ICU, I just did this thing, which is fine. But when we're dealing with veterans in so many different conditions, you're able to pull from a background saying, wait a second, I've actually been experiencing this thing. And here we go now to actually unpack something. I think that's powerful. And I think it's good to bring out when you're looking at the experience and the background for someone not just saying, hey, I'm a veteran, helping a veteran. Okay, but can you really help? Well, I'm a medical provider, but do you really understand this? So it's a very unique packaging that comes into that. I'm glad to have this conversation, pick back up where we left off last time. A lot has happened. This time, Nexus letters are very popular. This crazy concept, maybe you've heard of it. I believe it's AI. The new thing now, I believe, is ChatGPT. We've heard so many things. I have some questions. We've talked about this. It'll be great for people to get perspective on this. But when you look at AI as a whole, what is your overall big picture? What are your thoughts on it? I'm sure you've experienced some of it, but before we unpack the tactical things for DBQs, Nexus letters, and disabilities, what's your take on this?
My take on it is it's a great tool. And I think a lot of people rely on it in a different way. Not that it's a tool, they rely on it like it's the source of truth, that it is the expert, because it's digging down and giving you resources that you might have taken a long time to find, or you might not have even uncovered, you might not have turned over that stone. So there are moments it gives you a feeling and an impression that may not be real. And there's a lot of warnings out there. A lot of people have put out proper warnings about how to use it, what it should be, and the expectations, and check and valid, verify. However, it is really easy when you see something come out smooth and nice and it looks convincing,
Right.
to take it as truth when it may not be. And unless you're an expert in the space, you really can't always tell the difference. And
Yes.
that's what's really hard. So I think it's a great tool. I think it's going to revolutionize the world, just like we've seen historically. If you're a fan of history, I know my husband's more of a fan of history, but it repeats itself. You see examples throughout history about mistakes that we've made that we're not learning from, that we remake them, or you might have seen it in a different industry on how something changed and revolutionized things. That's going to be AI. It's coming. It's not going away. We just have to learn how to utilize it properly and implement it when it makes sense, and still keep that human reason, that human gut check. And that's my high level opinion on AI.
And it's funny because even when you use AI technology and you prompt something, there is a warning at the bottom, and it usually says, this is prone to errors, double check them. So even if you're querying something, whatever it may be, double check. It can hallucinate. It can give you whatever you want to hear. And even if you ask again, is this correct? You know what? Actually, it's not correct. So it's very much made to keep you using it. But then when you start to enter things like a VA claim, VA disabilities, something that's for compensation and your benefits and actual care and monies, that's a high stakes situation that you don't want to leave off to, this just sounds good to me. Then you end up going on a rabbit hole that doesn't give you the result that you want. AI is going to give you the answer you want. The VA is not necessarily going to correspond or cooperate or agree with it. And we've seen that time and time again. Before we unpack some details there, a few questions. So one of the questions that's come up is, what makes a private medical opinion strong? So thinking like your thoughts on that, many people are going to have their thoughts saying, we don't necessarily need that. Why should I get that? The VA should provide that. My records should speak for themselves. What is a private medical opinion for those that don't know anything about this?
I've always hated labels. I've always hated titles. When I was in more of a corporate world, titles don't matter to me. They don't mean anything. And I feel that that applies here too. You talk about that keyword, private Nexus letter, private medical opinion. How is it different? A medical opinion is a medical opinion. Private versus not private, that really is just a designation of, did the VA send you for this opinion, or did you seek this out yourself? Whether that's your treating doctor, whether that's a private company, like something like what we do with MRPY, it doesn't, if it's a friend, a family member, it doesn't matter. If someone medically is providing you a medical opinion, it's outside of the VA assigning that through a C&P exam. that's going to be classified as a private opinion. There's not one that's better than the other. I don't believe that it's it's not a line in the sand. It's not private opinions versus CNP exams or VA opinions. It's all about the evidence. I think at the end of the day, you need to look at what the evidence actually is and how you handle it, what you report, how you actually put it out into a formed document. That's what really matters. How do you know one's good? How do you know a provider's good? There's a lot of those questions surround that you're asking about that there's not a black and white checklist of being able to show when one's good. There are some criteria that help. You want to make sure that they're a medically credentialed provider. Some providers carry medical licenses, but they're not actually licensed to give a medical opinion. So radiologists, they have a medical degree. They can't diagnose. By rule of technicality, they can't offer a diagnosis. That diagnosis comes from your other doctors, the ones who send you there. So there's some technicalities in this. Getting an opinion letter from a chiropractor, that's valid unless the chiropractor is writing you a medical opinion about your heart condition.
My chiropractor, even though I've confided in him the pains of my life, should not write me a letter for my mental health situation.
Correct. Correct. So there are a lot of caveats and a lot of situational if and then and but not this kind of situations for everything. So it's really difficult to put it into one bucket like you're saying. And that's where I feel you have to get down to just the basic evidence.
Yes. So when you look at that, what are your thoughts when you hear things like the review of relevant medical records for someone going to get help somewhere? When we look at diagnosis, things that we look at there, the medical reasoning. Sadly, there's a lot of copy and paste. My friend got a letter, somebody Googled something, or ChatGPT did, or AI did, and I'm going to use that language and verbiage in there, unbeknownst to them that maybe what you're copying may be outdated and there's newer relevant information that trumps that or that's been rescinded. What is your thought when it comes to that? And when is medical literature, for example, appropriate?
So when you're thinking about a medical opinion, some of those things are a basic component. A diagnosis, we'll start there. It doesn't have to be a diagnosis of I have arthritis of my knee. Pain qualifies. Anything that causes a chronic disability will qualify. So pain, a symptom can be documented and qualify under being a diagnosis. And so there are specific exceptions to diagnosis. I don't want to get into the details of that. It may be a little bit too much, but we're going to use the term here as diagnosis, but it encompasses all of that. So anything I say when I say a diagnosis, that's what I mean. Documentation of symptoms, documentation of a condition, anything of that nature. So that is important. It's not required. You'll see all over the internet. I filed my claim and showed up for my CNP exam and I didn't have a piece of paper with me or submitted and I got service connected at 100%. Great. I'm so happy that that examiner chose to diagnose you with the condition. They felt strong enough. They don't have to. It's not required. So part of a good building your medical evidence for your claim is having that diagnosis when you file your claim, because you're not guaranteed to get that. We see it all the time. Then you're wasting your time spinning your wheels. So that is a key component that I feel is essential. It's not a requirement. So I'm going to talk a little bit about clarify about those types of things. But my opinion is it's a requirement, because why take the chance? I would not leave that up to chance, nor should you. So diagnosis is required. A relevant evidence review, because there are a lot of risk factors. There are a lot of things that contribute to every condition. And if you don't review the entirety of the medical record or the available evidence, you can't, as a medical provider, create a valid medical opinion, because if you're blinded without some of the evidence, then your opinion may be skewed and be incorrect. And so if the VA has other records that you either gave them or they were able to get, whether that's your service treatment records or VA records or whatever, if they have more information, they might have a better picture. They might have a more complete picture, and they may develop a different opinion that is truer to your condition than what your private medical opinion is. So having that complete review is essential. Medical literature It's a plus or minus. It depends on the case. Most of the time it is helpful because I've said this before and I say it a lot. You don't want a document that says, I'm Dr. So-and-so and these things are connected, sign, because that doesn't mean anything. Yes, your credentials mean something. However, it doesn't explain anything. It doesn't really give any stance for that opinion whatsoever, unless it's clear in the evidence. Then you don't need that. You wouldn't need it if it's clear. So you really need a credentialed provider, the appropriate credentialed provider. So that's an essential piece. Like I said, you don't want your chiropractor writing your heart condition or your mental health document. You also don't want your podiatrist doing heart surgery on you. It's a very clear concept, the right person writing the right opinion. So credentials matter in that sense. But the rationale is everything. 100% of everything. The why. Why are these two things connected? Nothing matters more than that. Having that right language, at least as likely. There's a lot out there that they put weight on at least as likely versus more likely than not. Bottom line, they both mean the same thing, in my opinion. They're both positive opinions. One does not mean more than the other in the sense of when you have a letter that's written properly, having that language changed isn't going to get you approved. It's not that guarantee. The rationale is, if I had to rank them in order of importance, rationale, diagnosis would be the top two things you really need to make sure you get. Having that comprehensive review with somebody, that would be third. But like you asked, when is medical literature appropriate? We add it in very rarely. I would say we don't add it. It's a rare case, and it's a very specific reason why we wouldn't add it. And it's unique to that veteran and their situation and all of their factors. We try to support every letter with some type of medical literature simply because we don't want our opinion to stand on, hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so, or I'm nurse practitioner or PA so-and-so, and I say, I may be able to eloquently say why I think two things are connected, but I want that extra backup. I want it to also say, I got it from here. I didn't just decide that's how it was and found. I want to say, I believe these two things are connected by this mechanism, and it's actually backed up by someone who researched it, someone who tested it, someone who said, yeah, that is true. But you have to be careful because there are problems in literature. There are problems in medical studies. This is why medicine doesn't adopt research findings for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's because it needs to not only be proven, but then tested again and reproven and solidified. Yes, there were no errors. We didn't exclude this factor. It's just like medicine. It's a gray zone. It's a fluid thing. It's not black and white. It is not something like you can check off. You really need to have that solid ground. Not all evidence, not all research is made the same. You can find research that aligns with your point of view, but if that research is flawed, then it's not a valid research study. And so this is part of why we'll get into, why can't I, as a non-medical provider, write my own Nexus letter? We'll get into that. But some of that is valid for that. If you cannot identify when a study is valid or has a flaw.
But I think that's powerful to understand how the FDA works and how medicine works. Some things take time. They go to trials. There's initial findings that this new drug might work and might solve a problem. But it's a controlled process until it gets rolled out to the masses. It's a staged thing. It's not like today we discovered a cure to cancer and tomorrow it's on mainstream, everybody's getting prescribed it. It is years, sometimes decades before something gets rolled out. That same mechanism, true for studies again. And it's really more so powerful for us because you will have a veteran who's going to look up a journal and say, rate me. This says I have a thing. I'm like, yes, but zoom out for a second. You can have a study that speaks to that, but arguably you may have another study that speaks that there may be other underlying issues, or it doesn't completely apply to you specifically. There are instances where veterans feel like, I'm vindicated. I found a journal that speaks about something very similar to me. Why did that not work?
But often we'll see it's at the surface level. This equals me. This piece is mine and it qualifies and this is how it is. But the other things don't apply to you. You might be 30 years old and the studies is talking about 70-year-olds, and that might matter. Age, gender, some of these factors, medical history, some of those things might matter more than what you're finding as a connection to you. And that's where having a medical provider or a medical specialist doing this really makes a difference because they're able to step back and say, objectively without bias, because it's your claim, you care a lot about it.
Wait, I'm biased? I want to win my claim? What do you mean?
And you may not be wrong, just may not be able to prove it.
Correct.
But me, I'm taking that step back and objectively able to say,
yes,
pros and cons. I'm able to look at it from both sides of the table. I was trying to deny you what does not line up.
Yes.
So what I make those columns, what
Yes.
lines up with your evidence, what does not. Factors that do not, I take into consideration. Those factors, how are they weighted? How important are they in this case, these risk factors in your particular situation? Which is why, like you said, my buddy has it, and I get it too. Because your buddy has different risk factors. Your buddy has different family history. Your buddy is different. You are different. Unless you're an identical twin, that is one of the few times that we've really been able to help. But your identical twin didn't do the same military service.
So even then, there's still nuances.
You were stationed on different sides of the country. You were exposed to different things. One was at Camp Lejeune. One was somewhere else. There are so many different that you cannot take that stance of this happened to somebody else, so therefore it should be me.
I want to focus on that for one teeny second, the bias. And I think while we can joke about it, it is true though. The fact is I am going to be biased to the fact that I'm making this argument and all the things that I see support my narrative. And even then, I would make an assumption and
combination bias, absolutely.
Combination bias. And then the fact that my providers who know me, it sounds great that they will help me, but to a degree they may be biased too because they're my treating physicians and so forth. And while they're going to do things legally, ethically, and so forth, they're citing on understanding where I'm coming from. I've told my doctor the VA has not helped me. I'm giving the rundown. I'll help you out. What do you need? And of course, they mean well, but that objective rationale to be able to look at it saying, look, I'm not on your side or against you. I'm going to see the medical evidence. Because when it goes to VA, they're not biased towards you. They're going to look at things black and white. Does it meet a requirement? There's a person who you've never met, who doesn't know you, who arguably isn't a medical provider, who is making a decision based off everything given to them. You've provided medical evidence. You went to a CMP examination. That provider provided another medical opinion, evidence, etc. All that gets compiled. And there is a capacity of rating officials. They're looking at all this, weighing it out, and they're not saying, you know what, Jim's a good guy. Not saying you won't land on somebody's right desk, but to your point, I think having that objective view that is unbiased, you make a strong argument, but have you considered this?
What it is, we're going to talk about this later, but what it is, the foundation. If you're thinking about a house, what we're doing is exactly that. We're building that good foundation because one claim may build off of that claim into more and more. And what we're seeing in the space right now is you hear a lot about it. I got my rating reduced. I got my rating taken away. It may not be everybody has heard that, but we, being that this is our space, we hear it. We see it, we hear it. And when we get down to the root problem of why, it is more likely a problem with your foundation. It's a problem with your original claim. You either submitted something that was not completely true, saying that a veteran is not being truthful, being true, meaning there were other pieces to it that might not have been viewed, that the VA might not have had the evidence of. They didn't know, they were missing records. There was something that wasn't true for the whole picture. So something changed, you get reevaluated. They take in that new evidence or that improvement or that something else that they take, they see something different, and then a change happens. And you, the veteran, are shocked. You're left with, I've had this for 5 years, 10 years. What's happening? Why now? And it's got triggered because of a reevaluation, a regularly scheduled reevaluation. Or it got triggered because you filed a claim secondary to that. If you don't have a good base, a good foundation, if you rush, if you take the easy way out, you're trying to cut corners, you're trying to rush, you're trying to just get to where you want to get to, you run the risk of this problem. And there's a lot of fear out there. And we talked about AI. There's a lot of fear that AI tools are going to be implemented at reviewing past claims or claims moving forward. It doesn't really matter. Past claims, future claims. Because eventually, if you file a secondary, that becomes part of the future claim. So your past claims are not safe if you're filing claims or if you're having that re-exam. So if in that case, you don't have to fear AI. There's no fear that needs to happen. You build the right foundation. You build it solidly the right way with the right evidence. And you continue to get seen, continue to be evaluated for that condition. And it's not just that, oh, I'm not going to see my doctor again. You're not going to have that problem because you built the right foundation.
You know, it's funny. I will put it this way in basic Army terms. It's like building a house made of straw. A bad wolf can come and huff and puff and try to blow your house down. But to your point, if the foundation is solid, it can stand a winter storm. It can stand hurricanes, all this stuff. Your foundation is solid. You're not building a flimsy claim argument on something that can be blown away at the slightest inconvenience. I think that's a great analogy for people to understand. Like, it's not just today's claim, but potentially your secondary and carry on claims, because usually this is a series of things you're going to argue. This is just one of maybe 3 or 5 different things. You want to have a solid foundation to build off of, because one level's fine, but if that level's shaky, 3 or 4 levels up, you're going to have a really shaky situation, which has answered this. But I would ask you, what is your opinion then when a veteran's actual facts need to be addressed and not generic language? And I'm sure you've seen this where providers or people go to providers to get something done, and there's copy paste things is not generic. For individuals out there who are going to reach out for medical opinions, getting a letter that actually addresses your specific case, not the generic language that 10 veterans came and they all got the copy paste. You're all infantry and you ruck march and you did a thing and you probably have a bad back.
We see this. Say this, don't say this. Say this, don't say this. It's all over the internet. It's wrong. The advice should be say how it affects you. Say what is true to you. Say what symptoms you have and how it impacts your life. It is all about you. There is no magic phrase. There is no say this, say that. If you say this, you'll get awarded. If that's not true, you might get awarded, but someone's going to come knocking on your door later, or they might. Maybe they won't. But at the end of the day, not building that right foundation. There is no quick trick. There is no cutting corners. There's no I can get this to you fast. There's no guarantee. There's none of that. It's not me against the C&P examiner. I think there's a lot of them who actually care. I think a lot of those rating officials, they actually care. You know, I see them on messaging boards saying, hey, I do this and I care and
I want to help you, but you're not helping me do my job because I'm not going to now connect something that cannot be connected.
There are bad apples and bad actors and sharks and whatever you want to call it. Like I said, I hate labels on both sides of the claim. And it's not I'm pitted against, that's not it. Medical evidence is not pitted against the VA or the C&P examiner. You are not pitted against an accredited agent or a law firm or the VA or anybody. You're not battling anybody.
Correct.
We're here to help veterans, and we have expertise and knowledge and insight and experience.
Yes.
Talk about that too. Experience.
That part.
That matters when it comes to this, because this is serious stuff. This is their life. This is a make or break, life or death situation. And there are people out there looking for money. I get it. There are people out there who see this as a quick buck, who can care on a surface level. They're veterans too. They're medical providers also. They've been through this. They've done this. You hear it. It is a repeated broken record, but there's more to us. There's more to you below that surface. Yes, we are that, but we're not only that. We don't just stand on that. And it matters because it's your life.
And it's so easy for people to just overgeneralize and simplify that.
That is exactly the generic phrases, the generic things. They may work, they may not, but it may not be you. When I see generic stuff come through, it's either you don't have enough evidence and we're telling you these things, I believe you. I believe they bother you, and I believe that you're suffering and you don't have it documented. Why don't you take the time to get it documented properly? It's not that we don't believe you. Why should get it documented properly so that you have that paper trail? That's important, so that you're not just fighting with your word. You're actually getting that objective opinion by your doctor to say, these things exist and I'm going to try to treat you for them and try to help you with them. When you start to get a lot of those generic pieces, it's people grabbing at straws. It's I don't have enough evidence and I'm looking for how can I win? How can I win this claim? It's not about winning the claim. That's not what it's about. And you'll see generic things and I'll hear it. I can tell when I talk to someone and they've gotten bad advice like this. You know what I hear? I hear, and this is the most common way I've used this a lot. I hear someone say, yeah, my migraines are so bad. They're productive of economic inadaptability. And let me tell you, prior to doing VA disability claims, do you know how many times in my medical practice, my over 20 years medical practice experience, have I ever heard the words economic inadaptability? A big fat zero. A big fat zero. And I was a neurology major as an undergrad. And So it's not that I wasn't in the space to hear it.
Correct.
I was in the
Right.
space. My undergraduate degree from college is in neurology,
Yes.
is in neuroscience.
Yes.
I was in those clinics around those patients from the beginning. Never once do I hear that. I don't see it in textbooks. It's not in the medical literature. These things are unique to VA disability.
Right.
And when I hear that, I'm like, you were coached by someone, or you read the 38 CFR. Nothing wrong with that. I want people to be educated. I want them to read the 38 CFR. But what helps me is what you actually feel, and actually that you couldn't go to your kid's soccer because you had a migraine.
Correct. I'm out of leave. I'm literally almost on the verge of getting let go. I don't have sick leave left. I burned annual leave. I'm actually dealing with this stuff. I can't take on extra gigs. I have to forego hours. That actually speaks to that versus my economic inadaptability.
But there's no checklist. There's no generic thing anyone can give you that's out there telling you and giving you advice that can say, do this, don't do this.
Correct.
And it bothers me, because at the end of the day, your case is unique and it should be about you. And there is nothing else that should be said.
And the sad part is, to your point, you as a provider see that now, obviously, in the space. So how often do you think the systems see this at the VA, where here comes another claim with the exact copy paste thing? And it's like, you're not helping yourself when you're not really speaking to what you're dealing with. For sure, get yourself versed. I love when people are saying, read the CFR. First of all, that's like saying read case law. If you don't understand the foundation of law to begin with, don't even try to look up tort and things of that nature. Like, you don't know the first thing about medicine outside of seeing Doogie Howser. Don't think you're going to outright now create something you don't know. To your point, speak to your truth. And it sounds sometimes so basic, but it's the truth. Speak to what's actually affecting you, how it affects you. The same way, crazy concept, that you would talk to your doctor when you went to go get seen.
Some people feel it's a numbers game. There are people out there, companies out there, who that is their philosophy. It's a numbers game. Quantity over quality. You will make money as a business that way. You will win claims for veterans. That is true. You won't be doing it the right way, and you won't be helping the veterans that actually need it. You'll be sending a portion of veterans down a path of denial and failure and all of those feelings that come along with it. And at what end? At your numbers game?
What happens when that sacred foundation gets reevaluated or questioned or gets called back in, and that quick turn company that got your attention is no longer here? Like, we talked about this yesterday, but I think it's powerful when you have longevity, where the fact that we've been in business and collaborating for a very long time, but our veterans and people that we service uniquely in collaboration know that we were with you 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and we want to be here in the next 3 years, in the next 4 or 5 years, because that matters, versus this pop organization that thought, hey, I'm a nurse practitioner. I can do a thing. I can do what you did. That's very superficial. I can see a doctor walk into a room, ask some questions of a patient, and think, all he did was ask 3 questions. I could do that. You overgeneralize the specialty that doctor walked into that room with. Who is it? I want to say it was General Mathis in the Marine Corps. They had asked him a question about how were you able to make this decision when it came to combat in one of the previous conflicts and so forth in Iraq. And it's like, well, in 30 seconds, I was able to make a decision that took me 30 years of experience to learn how to make. And I think that, to me, has always stood with me, where it's easy to say, well, how can you answer that so quickly? Well, it's 20 years of experience clinically and in studies and so forth that I can answer a question. Like, do not diminish that. In this world and age of fast food, everything, time, you cannot negate that. A company can pop up and say all these nice things, but do they have the pedigree and acumen and background and experience to say, that's great, but have you considered X, Y, Z? Because in my experience, this is the first part, but here's the things you're not seeing.
It matters. All of these factors matter, and it's a dizzying effect on veterans who are probably listening, because how can they tell the difference? They're showing up, they don't know any of this. How they see this fancy website, they hear this wonderful 30, they hear this 30-second video, and it all sounds good. And
in 90 days, you can win your claim. You can.
I hear it, I see it. Do we say the same thing sometimes? Sure. I've heard things where I told you yesterday, if I didn't hear the person talk, I couldn't tell the difference if this was me or not. It really hits on it, but at a surface level. And you really, when you uncover the layers, you realize, you're right, who's going to stand with you, who's going to be there when your case fails, who's out for the, the quick turnaround, the quick money, who's going to nickel and dime you through there. This is exactly why we offer free rebuttals. This
You
is
know what?
exactly
I think
why
you're a witch. I was literally gonna say that just now.
we have always
Yes.
offered free rebuttals
Wait a second.
from day
So,
one.
all right. So we've known each other maybe since 19, 2020, something around that frame. You've been doing this for a long time. I know this, but I think it's good for people to know that this is not the latest hack to get someone's attention of, oh, we do Nexus letters, independent medical opinions, but we also do free rebuttals. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I don't think I've seen anyone offer free rebuttals, and it's always been a part of our core service line because we understand that claims aren't one and done and quick. Claims get denied. There's a process. That's why they have a higher level review, supplemental claim, a VBA option. That's why they have so many options if there is a part of this process that is incorrect or wrong. And often it's not the veteran's fault. I can probably count on one hand in all that time where it truly was the veteran's oopsie. And it's usually an oopsie of, oh, I forgot about that. I forgot I had this car accident, and you can't explain away my back pain because of my lack of records or something. It's usually an oopsie of, oh, I completely forgot about that.
Yes.
And it's rare that it's the veteran's fault, if you want to call it that. It's usually a misunderstanding of evidence, a disagreement of opinions between us and the medical provided opinion from the VA. We need to develop for further evidence. We're not sure. It's not clear. The water is still a little murky at the connection. The breadcrumb dots are just a little too far apart. We need to add more. None of that is at the veteran's fault. It's not their fault.
Yes.
So we understand that there may be opinions or things that are part of their claim that we don't know of at the time we wrote the original Nexus letter. So we're not going to fault the veteran and make them pay again for a document to say, oh, now we have more evidence, let's adjust this. We do that for free because we see that as part of the claim. We see it as part of the process.
Yes.
It's part of our experience. It's part of our understanding of the complex system that it is. And we're not out for a quick buck.
Yes.
We never have been. We tell you no, we tell people you send us no, because I'm not afraid to say you don't have it yet. You're not ready yet. You need more evidence. And here's what I see is missing. And if you've got that, then that'll be helpful.
Yes.
But it's not about saying yes to everyone. It's not about saying, oh, this is a one and done. It's understanding the complexity of what filing a VA claim is and what that actually entails to provide support for the veteran. Because that's what you're asking for. When you're coming to a company, you're asking for support for that claim. And what that looks like is this. To us, it's a free rebuttal. To you, it's on turning over every rock. It's doing the hard work. It's not taking the easy increase,
not the shortcut
only.
And all that.
It's taking everything you have and say, this is your whole picture.
Yes.
And you take the time to do that.
Yes.
You take the time to understand the whole picture. You're not just saying, ooh, these are your high value claims. We hear that. These are like, you can win. Every veteran should
your
follow
high value
this.
claim.
Let me, how many, I can rattle them all off because I see them out there. You actually say, I don't care about all that.
Yeah.
I take you and I look at your situation and we do the same thing. I take you and understand this is a relationship. This is a path. This is not a one and done. Sometimes it is.
You're right. But sometimes it's not. I think that's also, and we talked about this yesterday and over the years, we're not probably the best business people. Again, it's 2026, so we're doing amazing stuff and we're going to grow and do amazing things for veterans. But I mean that in the sense that we are good, honest, old school business people in the sense that the ROI to me is not the high value claim. I will celebrate someone winning a tinnitus claim the same way as I'll celebrate somebody going from 90 to 100. Because for that one veteran, I had a veteran briefly told you about, they paid $1,500 for a 40-minute phone call. And that 40-minute phone call just basically told him to get a Nexus letter. Ask him what the Nexus letter was supposed to be for. He didn't know. Did he get connected to a provider? Nope. So for 40 minutes, he was just told nothing. So he walks away now more lost than he started, $1,500 in the hole. And when I talked to him after we had reached out, he literally, like, when you hear someone's pain in their voice, and his thing was, I just need a win. I have been down a path of denials and setbacks, and I just got screwed, and I just need a win.
And then you find out they're doing it wrong because they were under these assumptions
Correct.
that were at the surface level,
Correct.
might have been thought as good, but they weren't. And then when you actually take the time to understand what the real situation is for that veteran, and you send them down the right path, it's amazing how fast
changes
things
everything.
changes. It changes everything. And like you, my ROI, which what I would call as where I feel like we're doing well. What I gauge as a win in my business is when I pop onto my social media,
Yes.
which I did. I changed my picture. I updated my photo. It was old, and I had gotten 2 clients just this past week post on there, and they post, "You changed my life. You know, your documents made the difference." That to me, you didn't have to go on there and see that and say, "Oh, I changed my." That's all. I changed my profile picture. Really, I didn't. There wasn't anything. I wasn't asking for anything. I wasn't offering.
I just did an update.
I just did an update to.
And you felt compelled to say that, which is something you don't see in a tire shop. I get my tires rotated. I don't go by and say, "You got to change my life." I just bought some tires. It was a service. It was a transaction. This is not just transactional. To me, it's someone's life.
It shows that they felt that I took them.
Yes.
And I cared for them. Yes. And their claim mattered to me. Yeah. I did what was necessary in order to show their evidence and make it shine. Yes. It mattered to them, and they were thankful for it and said that. And I really appreciated that.
Yes.
I don't hear from everybody, but that's the kind of stuff that really, that gives me, I'm on the right path. I'm doing the right thing, because there is a lot out there. Our field is so saturated. I'm like, I don't know who these people are.
Yes.
I've never heard their names. I've never seen them. And we've been in this space for years,
a
long time. And I'm like, we went from there were a few people, a handful of people. We heard of
the big ones, the medium ones.
We knew who there were. Then we went through a period of there was some hiding of who owned what.
Like people reimagined themselves. They transitioned from sharks to anti-sharks. They converted.
Yeah. Every time I turn, I see someone else saying, "I can write you a document." Someone else saying, "I can help you with your claim."
Right.
And my first thought is, who are you and where have you been?
Right.
Not that somebody can't come new to the scene and can't do it right. That's not the truth. But it is very confusing out there for veterans, because we know what right looks like.
Right. But the regular veteran, how can they tell?
How can they tell? And that's what I think you're asking me. The gist of this question, and the gist of what is a good Nexus letter from a private provider. There are no real easy ways to look at the surface, but there are clues, the context clues that you're in the right place. When you see, "I guarantee you this," there are no guarantees. "I can get this to you super fast. Are you taking your shortcut?" They don't want to ask you questions about yourself, your condition. Right. They don't want to know more details about you and your situation. They want to offer their advice. Say this, say that. Those are red flags, in my opinion, that this may not be what you're looking for. So when you go, what does right look like? Because yes, they might have a Nexus letter. Somebody might have won. Someone might have won with them, and that's great. But are they right for you?
Correct.
Maybe not. They may not be. But if your case is not easy, if your case is not that low-hanging fruit, you actually have the evidence already in your file and you don't need them. If you don't need them, they're going to win anyway.
Correct.
They're going to take that as they did it. You just don't know because you didn't know what was in your evidence. They're going to lean on that. And when they lean on that, you're going to hear the same thing. They're going to tell all 100 people that show up at the door the exact same thing. Yep. Where I say, I don't think you're going to hear the same thing twice out of my mouth when it comes to talking to people, because everybody is very different. There may be some pieces that are the same because there's not 2 different ways to say some things.
You're right.
Some research studies apply to a larger amount of people. Sure. At the end of the day, that's where cut and paste ends. So yes, research studies can apply to more than one person, but the rationale, your symptoms, your history, your military situation, unique to you. If you start hearing those things, that should get that hair on the back of your neck standing up. Or if you're asking for this to be fast and easy, we aren't for you.
Right.
We are not for you. That's cool. You might win your claim. You might get what you need. You might succeed. Fabulous.
Yeah. I love that for you.
I love that for you. I don't take that approach because I've seen so many people have years of fight and they're doing the wrong thing and they were told the wrong thing. And all that anguish, all that stress on them, their family, their life. That's a lot. If you take the quick road, if you take those low-hanging fruits and you don't take this seriously, you have to be careful with this decision. It's a big decision. And there's more than just us out there that are good. We can only talk about what we do,
Yep.
what we believe, and what we feel upfront and honest truth. You're going to hear it 100%, whether you like it or not, you're going to hear the truth.
And consistency. And that's the part, it matters to be consistent. We've talked about this years ago. There's no change in our script. There's no change in our ethics, our morals, our values. We're saying the same things. We adapt to changes and things that are happening.
Because it's not a gimmick. It's
not a
just
gimmick.
reality.
It's not like, you know what, now this is the new wave. Let's switch and start doing this thing now. There's no big ROI to saying no, but I'll tell you what, that's a real big one to me. If a company is able to push back and say no, I know for a fact that for me, I'll tell veterans, we'll send them over to your organization. And it's like, look, if they don't see the argument, please understand that this is not a welcome to VNCC. If you need something, we have a medical network. We have an amazing organization here that will take care of you. Wink. That's not happening here. It's literally, the argument sounds solid. The medical professionals will weigh in. And if they see an argument, they will help you. But if it's not there, don't come back crying, because we're telling you not everybody gets it. This is not one of those no credit, bad credit. You can still walk out here with a car. Not going to happen. You're not leaving this lot with medical support if you have no credit. You need to have something. Bad credit, fix your shit, come back.
Yep.
That's what I would say.
Yep.
Now that we built the foundation of that, when would you say a veteran actually needs a Nexus letter?
Oh, so there, again, I say this a lot. There's not a hard, fast rule that you can follow as a checkbox that they need it, they don't need it. It's usually when the evidence isn't clear. So when the dots aren't there and visible and easy to see, or there's a gap in care, there's missing evidence, there's something that is not clearly understood by the medical community as connected, as one causes the other. Radiculopathy is a great example. It's what I use all the time. Radiculopathy is widely accepted to come from the lower back. I'm simplifying this, but it's widely accepted. Yeah. If you're trying to say your radiculopathy is coming from your IBS, not a thing, by the way, don't do that. Please don't.
Please do not ChatGPT that one.
You would need a Nexus letter, because that doesn't make medical sense to most people. So you don't need a Nexus letter if you've got the evidence. If you've got a back condition that's connected and you got radiculopathy, lower leg radiculopathy, and you've got the evidence that it's documented in your chart, you should file your claim. You don't need me. You don't. That's very simple and easy. A lot of things are clear like that, and you don't need a Nexus letter. And other times it's not. But you know what? What I do believe strongly in, it comes out in a medical evidence review. So we perform a medical evidence assessment on everybody for the purpose, and I know a lot of other companies do some sort of chart review of whatever your evidence is, and some may not, but we do, because we need to know what your evidence says. Because there are times when I do these medical evidence assessments and I say, you don't need us for this. Yeah. You should file this claim because it's well known in the medical community, or you have all the evidence clearly documented. So part of a medical evidence assessment, in my opinion, is not just at that layer. It's actually being able to say, you have a case, you don't have a case, you have documented evidence to support this connection, you don't, or you don't need me. I'm telling you, I don't think a lot of companies are going to tell you that. I don't believe that. They'll just say, we can write you a Nexus letter for this. I'm going to say, what you hear from me and my providers is, I can write you a Nexus letter for this, but you don't need it. If you want to file this on your own, go ahead. If you get denied, I want to see that denial letter, because I feel your evidence is strong. You don't actually need anything. So if there's a misunderstanding, maybe at that point we might need to write something. But at this point, it's a choice to you. If you'd like to add this evidence to your, that's okay. But I personally don't think you need to, because I can clearly see it. It's not a dot that I have to explain as a medical provider. You do not need me to make that deep and thoughtful rationale, because it's not there. It's there. I can shore it up. I can document that, but I say that's how we present our medical evidence assessments. I think that's where bad businesswoman comes in. I'm not just trying to sell you a product. I'm trying to help you. And what that looks like is very different than someone who is trying to sell you a product. They'll tell you they're trying to help you, but are they really? Are they really going to be there for you?
I think that's a big one. I've told people online, if you don't need us, I'll tell someone that. And I generally mean it when I say, hopefully you don't need us. And it sounds very weird to someone, because what do you mean? I do hope, like, if I see that your argument is sound, you may come to us, I look over your things, and like, you have everything already there. You just need some moral support. That's what it comes down to. You're paralyzed by overanalyzing it. you're good to go. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work, come back. We can reassess. Hopefully you don't come back. And someone kind of goes, what do you mean? I'm like, I mean it. Like, I'd rather you go away and say this organization or that organization gave me a fair review. They gave me encouragement and information, and I went and did that thing. I was successful, but they gave it to me straight. And you know what? Tomorrow they may know someone who does need. Like, it's a bigger picture game versus the I need to make a transactional move right now. To your point of I'm going to sell you a next letter, sell you a course or a service or what have you, when you don't need it.
I've often said this to people. You're asking me for 3 Nexus letters or 4 or whatever. And looking at where your claim status is, I can write you all of these. You don't have the evidence for all of them. Nexus letter would help in any of these claims. But all 4 of these right now may not help you get any better of where you're trying to go. If you're trying to increase your rating for healthcare reasons, for financial reasons, for whatever reasons, it doesn't matter. If you're going to get these 4 letters, and if you get 1 letter and it can possibly take you from 80 to 90, you get 4 letters and it can take you from 80 to 90.
What is that ROI here for you?
Exactly. Timing might be your conversation. So I might not be telling you, I can't write a letter. You can do this on your own. I might also be telling you, why are you paying me this much money for 4 letters when you're going to get the same result with 1? Put these in your back pocket. Or why don't you just wait? If you're in such a rush, that's the problem. People are in such a rush. I get it. You want to get it now. You want to be done with it. You don't want to deal with the VA anymore because it is stressful. I know it is stressful. But if you have unlimited funds and you just want to toss money around, no one is going to say no to you. But are they going to tell you, why don't you do this in a stepwise approach? We do.
Strategy.
Because
it's a crazy concept.
It's not about the dollar for me. It's about helping you. And in that situation, I can help you with 4 letters. But is that the right thing to do today? That is what it is. Our integrity, our values, what our company stands for is about, at the end of the day, what helps you, what is your unique situation, and all the factors around that. That's where I feel like we are different, where you can say, how do I tell if there's a provider or a company is good? If you don't have an example of their Nexus document, doesn't mean you don't need an example of their Nexus document, because all these companies can write a good Nexus document for some things. But can they take your situation and apply that theory correctly, give you for that condition? Because it's not a one size fits all. So you're not going to hear those things from companies who are trying to take your money. You're going to hear, I can write you 4 Nexus letters. Let's get you into the details. I can just tell you, say this, say that. You start hearing those things repeatedly, start seeing. So listen to what people tell you. Listen to when you're interacting with that company, listen to what they're telling you. Because if it doesn't sound right, gut check. If this sounds too good to be true, it doesn't sound honest. Yeah, you've been fighting for 4 years, but I can get you this in 6 months. How's that possible? How is that a guarantee I can get you all your hopes and dreams in 6 months? It's not real. It's not the way the VA system is. Not true.
So we have instances where someone is denied because there's lacking medical evidence. In that case, a Nexus letter can bridge some of the gaps, to your point.
It can. Yeah, it can bridge some of the gaps. If you have some breadcrumbs, I always talk about in breadcrumbs, but service treatment records that say this, or close to service records, you're trying for a direct claim, depends on what type of claim you're going for. If you've got a 20-year gap and in between that you have a car accident, that's going to be really hard. You don't have any medical records to say that your current condition is related to service when you have that incident in between. Every situation's different, but if you're, say you don't have records for 7 years, but you're a paratrooper, you have all of this documentation, and then you have left service, and what do? You're in an office, you're just sitting around working on a computer. You're not going to develop these kind of injuries from that work. So there's a lot of things that a good Nexus letter can do, connecting the dots. There are some very generic things that I can say that are things that a Nexus letter will help with. Gap in care. That is a big one. You don't have documentation of things. Evidence to show that your current condition is caused by the condition in service if they have 2 different diagnoses. Some of those things matter. If you don't have a diagnosis, if you have a very weak diagnosis, so it's documented, but it's not documented in the right area, your doctor's not acknowledging it, they're not treating it, they're not taking care of it. They might say it's in the history. Someone listed it, a medical assistant put it in your chart under your history, but it's not documented anywhere else. Some of these things you might need Nexus letters for, to explain that you haven't had the documentation of how your condition really impacts you, or what symptoms you have or how severe they are. And you might have some basic documentation, but you might need that Nexus letter in order to connect the dots. The medical conditions aren't the second thing. So that's more gap in care stuff. The medical conditions are not inherently known or associated by medical professionals because it's in the literature, it's in the research realm, not in the practicing realm. So a big one that we see all the time, that we'll see arguments. You'll see people say this is connection is not possible. You'll see that it is. You'll see a bunch of things. Sleep apnea secondary to PTSD.
Yes.
It is a tough claim. Why is it tough? The literature is there. It's the proof. Being able to document some of these things, this mental distress triggers a cascade of events in your body. Documenting that is very different. You haven't seen your doctor for years. You didn't tell them that you're not sleeping. You didn't tell them that how you feel and how it impacts you. You show up, you get your visit. So say you do, you got your CPAP, you go, you show up. How's everything? I guess it's okay. You're not doing it well. There's no progression to where the doctor needs to intervene. So they're not asking you a bunch of other questions, and you're not offering up any more information either.
Right.
So it's there, but it's really hard to prove, because are you seeing a mental health provider? Are you telling them about your sleep stuff? No, you're talking about other issues you're struggling with, but they're all connected. And it's a matter of taking someone to see these pieces, put them together and line them up, and for the VA to say, this is how this works, and here's the evidence in that veteran's case. You find it in interesting places, which is why I tell people, upload everything. I want to see everything, because you have no idea who you told. You told your physical therapist something, and you didn't tell your orthopedic doctor. It's going to be in the physical therapist's notes. Talk to your doctor about you're not sleeping, having trouble in your marriage, and you were yelling at your kids or whatever. But you didn't tell your mental health provider. We're finding the evidence in all sorts of places. And unless you get that evidence review and have someone who's experienced with it, that's where you need an Nexus letter. You have to explain that, because it's not clearly written in your records.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the breadcrumbs. I think it helps folks understand that there are many reasons. I dislike when veterans dismiss another veteran who genuinely is looking to accomplish this goal of getting their service connection, but there are gaps for various reasons. We have instances where I'm not going to keep seeing my orthopedic surgeon who just tells me I need surgery. I don't want surgery, so I'm going to bite the bullet and deal with pain. My condition is true. I'm just not going to keep spending money I don't have to be treated or told the same thing. There are some conditions that are not going to have the continuity of care like others. And then there's also gap in insurance and care, a myriad of things of why a veteran at times may have the gap. It doesn't mean the condition isn't true. It doesn't mean they're not dealing with it. Something that I thought about, it's almost like pre-claim activities. And I think we do that without even realizing it sometimes. We do, but maybe we don't call it that. And for example, someone may go to you and you may tell them, you know what, keep going to the doctor, keep building the evidence. You're not ready yet. And that's not a no. That's I need something to connect. You can get this, but you have to do some legwork now.
I believe you. You're telling me this. And when I look at the claim, I'm seeing that saying, I believe you. You're writing it down, but it's not documented. And if you just take the time to make sure that your symptoms are documented, and this is not a say this, say that. It is you make sure your symptoms are documented. You make sure that you hear what your symptoms are, how long they're lasting. This is basic stuff, and how it's impacting you in your life. Making sure that that's documented is well worth your time, and delaying your claim 6 months to do so is well worth your time, because likely you will win more chances than not than if you rush it, get a denial, and now you have to fight a denial
on top of that.
I
think one thing for me, I've shared at times, I took a long time to address my medical conditions that led to my medical retirement from the federal government. And one of the things that I've kind of surmised is that if I didn't address it, it wasn't real. If I didn't get seen, it wasn't real. I knew things were happening, but I ignored them. Like most things, a lot of us tend to just get stuck into, I need to pay these bills, I need to keep the job going, I need to do whatever I need to be doing, ignoring what's happening. It doesn't mean I wasn't struggling or dealing with problems or issues. I was very intentionally ignorant of it because I don't want it to be real. I don't want the diagnosis. I don't want to be labeled, whatever my rationale was. And many veterans can relate to that. And now that we're having this conversation, I think a veteran learns now how transparent and honest I must be, because we go through the motions sometimes. Like when I was on this job, a lot of our agents and law enforcement, especially, they would say whatever they need to say just to stay fitness ready, deployable ready. Mm-hmm. People in the military, in the reserve, they're making sure they're still deployable. Any problems to report, any changes? Nope.
Does that hurt you? Yes. Does it make it impossible for you to win? No. It's a lot. You have to take all of that into consideration. Yeah. And everyone's done it. I've taken care of myself. Yeah. I've ignored my pain. I've got a chronic knee and back issue, and I have to tell myself that when I go in for my annual visit with my doctor, I need to talk about this. It's not because I'm looking for new medicine. It's not because I'm looking for a new intervention. It's just because I'm acknowledging this still exists. This is still a problem for me. Yeah. And it's important to take 30 seconds to say this is still going on. Because outside of VA disability, you have no idea if you're not medical. You have no idea when that actually matters. And that could be something that triggers a thought in your provider's mind to say, ooh, these things actually connect in something that you don't know about, and I need to send you for
some follow-up work to develop an acceptance.
Not because you're back, but because it fits into something that you're not tracking that might happen to you years later. So it's part of preventative medicine. That's what those annual visits are really for. So if you go to the VA, it doesn't matter if your VA doctor, you feel they're not supportive of you, they don't have time. There's a lot of reasons. Do they not care? I don't know.
Right.
Do they care and they just have a quota, or that they have they're having a bad day, they've got 50 patients to see that day and they only have 20 minutes with you? That's fine. Come prepared, touch on all that. If not, send it in a message. It's part of your report. Hey, I'm letting you know this is still bothering me. I'm not looking for new medicine. I'm communicating that these are my symptoms. This is how it makes me feel. This is what's going on. And if it does, trigger your doctor to send you for a test or ask you to come back for a visit or prescribe a medication, consider that they're trying to take care of you. And if they don't know, they can't take care of you. And that same thing applies to VA disability. It's not you get service connected and you're done. If you don't get continued documentation, it could harm you in the long run. And it's not because the condition doesn't exist or you don't have treatment for it. It's just, this is part of taking care of yourself.
And I think there's a lot of ignorance, sadly, that goes into that. And you touched on it earlier. I always tell someone, how serious would you be taken if you were to file a workman's comp claim with no medical records? I think there's a big misconception of what the VA is, because I understand to the stories of my friend filed a claim with nothing and walked out with a rating because they were diagnosed in the CMP exam. But to leave that to chance, it makes no sense, because if you're arguing that I have this debilitating migraine that's causing all these issues, how have I not seen someone to make that argument? So I think it matters, obviously, in the totality of that. For that, secondary claims, Nexus letters, helpful?
They're helpful in secondary claims a lot more than primary claims. Now, it depends on the claim, to be honest with you. I've written plenty of direct to service claims because you have to explain various things. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Nexus letters aren't helpful in primary claims, but they are more essential, I think, in secondary claims, because you're explaining how one complicated medical condition is related to another complicated medical condition. They all have different factors affecting each of them. And you're trying to draw a line. And I see this a lot in denials or decision letters, where I'll see that it's due to this, not this. So if your weight gain is not due to your mental health condition, it's due to your choice.
Poor life choice, etc.
Your poor life choices or whatever. But they're not considering, we write this all the time, they're not considering the evidence that we sometimes have. We'll say, no, but in this veteran's case, they've been part of the MOVE program. They are taking the medications. They are doing all the right things, and yet they're still not able to lose the weight. Their mental health notes are aligning with this mental distress. And this is what the research shows. So those secondary claims are really important because they're very complicated. PTSD is a complicated condition, and sleep apnea is a complicated condition. And you add obesity in the mix of that. Now you got a third medical condition that is complicated, multifactorial, and you have to piece it all together. And you really need that nexus most of the time if you don't have if it's not something you have overwhelmingly
in your records to be able to actually prove that.
It's not common in the medical field to have that kind of evidence because the doctor is treating you or trying to cure you. And that being the case,
there may be a weak correlation, but not one that satisfies service connection, where it may note you have this other conditions and I'm treating you for this. Yes, there's a mention of the PTSD in your treatment of sleep apnea, but that's not a magic bullet that said, oh, look, she mentioned PTSD. It's part of treatment and addressing something.
Yes, their goals are different. The goals are different in VA disability. It doesn't align with medical treatment.
Yeah. So we talked about secondaries, direct to service. One thing folks get mistaken on is the difference between causation and aggravation when it comes to claims. And you have individuals tell them, like, you went into the service with flat feet. You can't argue that something was caused by when it actually is this crazy other concept. Can you break down what causation and aggravation is?
Yes, causation and aggravation. I talk about this a lot. We've been putting out a lot more content about some of these basic definitions just so that it's clear for people. And causation is very simply stated, one thing caused something else. And it is not often that that happens in VA disability space. It is really rare, that back condition. Your back condition is likely the cause of your sciatica, your radiculopathy. That is very widely accepted in the medical community. There's very little that are outside forces or risk factors coming into play in that situation. Whereas most connections or most situations, you can't tell if it caused it because it is a complicated medical condition that has multiple risk factors. By the time it started to the path of when it was diagnosed is quite long. And not only are there outside risk factors, there are also other medical conditions are contributing to it. And you have to be able to say for causation that it's a very definitive, this caused this, meaning if you didn't have this, this would never have happened. You wouldn't have gotten cancer if this happened. It's very hard to say. We get that with PFAS chemicals. People are, I'm exposed. PFAS is everywhere. It's everywhere. And you're exposed to it daily, repeatedly. For you to say this caused my cancer and I was exposed to PFAS on this base, you have to have really supportive evidence to really say that for causation. So aggravation is where most claims live. Most things where you're talking about this worsened beyond the natural progression of the disease. Those are important words. You hear that all the time. So aggravation is something made it worse. Something either made it worse in severity or the outcome of it. The progression of the disease you wouldn't have been so debilitated. You might have always had whatever this is, but it wouldn't have progressed to this severe of a thing. That's what I mean by severity. You could have had it no matter what, but if the level was 2 and that's the expected and your level is 10 and it was due to your service or your service connected condition, that's where aggravation comes into play. So it's development of the condition could be part of that, could be just the severity of it. There are a lot of levels of where the aggravation happened. At the end of the day, you're still sitting at the same place. The VA needs a current chronic disability and you need to be able to tie it to you would have not had that condition or you would not have had it as severe, one of those two for it to qualify. So aggravation is where most people land, which is funny because a lot of decision letters, you'll see them take a look at it and say, this doesn't cause this.
The argument was never causation. The argument was aggravation.
It was. And we wrote that. Our Nexus letter says aggravation. Why wasn't that considered properly? Now, the VA has gotten better over the years. There have been improvements. We've seen more detailed denial letters, which is an improvement. I know some people see that as a detriment. I don't. You're giving me more information. You're helping me understand why you thought what you thought.
Versus a blanket statement.
Yeah, versus what we used to get was those decision letters where you get a paragraph with regulation, causation, regulation, done. And you're left guessing.
This gives me nothing to respond.
You're left guessing, whereas now you're getting a lot more. And so we still see the aggravation is not considered, but it is the basis of most claims, in my opinion. I really think that there's so many factors that impact it that's really hard to say causation, just like it's hard to say more likely than not. It's one of those things where I can pull out a handful a year where I use those words. I do not use, and I've been asked, We get asked all the time, I want you to change this to more likely than not. No, no, sorry, because it doesn't apply. And we'll get into that here as well. The details matter, the wording matters. They're both positive opinions. Same thing with causation versus aggravation. It matters which one. And when you see someone asking for it, they're really just, they don't know what they don't know. And they don't know why. They've heard that saying this causes that makes a difference. They don't know what they're asking for and why. But if we can't support to show that there's a clear line between two conditions and no other factors are playing a role, you can't use causation. You have to use aggravation, and it can make a difference.
So you kind of brought up with PFAS. Talk to me about complicated exposure cases, which we've seen much more of. We see a lot of the burn pit exposure, environmental exposures. We know when PACT Act came around, and then you add terror into the mix. So talk to me about those complicated cases that you've seen when it comes to exposures, both current and past tense with VA claims.
Exposures are probably the toughest cases because the evidence is not usually there. I really feel for those veterans because it's not that it doesn't exist. You can't prove it. And it's really hard to prove on both sides, on the research side and on the evidence side. We'll see claims where you're exposed. How were you exposed? You have to have those details, and you have to be very detailed. You physically being on a base, oh, they found asbestos on this base. Were you in the building of the asbestos? Did you have things hanging down? Like was the ceiling crumbling on? Did you come home with, that matters. But they just found asbestos base. Well, how can I prove that you were exposed to asbestos? Because that's the question. How were you exposed? What very specific details of your exposure? And then you go on the other side of it with the research. And they may not be doing that kind of research to the detail that you, they might be doing asbestos research into the type of cancer that you have. They may not. There's a lot of other factors that don't apply to you in that research. It makes it hard to say that this research study is applicable to you. There's always the first few who break through to make this happen. I get that. But those people who break through and actually get awarded have those details. Otherwise, they don't have, I was on this base and this was found.
If you can actually expound on that same point there, because one person got something, it doesn't necessarily create a precedence for others. And that's also a very big misconception. Just because there is a court case, because again, now we're savvy, right? We have technology, we have journals, but then you have court cases. And veterans have done their due diligence and they find someone with a similar profile to them and say, look, this was awarded to somebody. Yes, for their specific case. It's not a precedence that's been set forth like a presumption where now we know an agent or an exposure of a Vietnam veteran may lead to something like diabetes. That's conceded at scale. Whereas in this case, this may be the first of a group of individuals to get this condition, or he's an anomaly and his medical evidence painted it. Not necessarily that because you have a journal, you have a court case, it's going to be granted to.
It takes a lot for those cases, honestly. And like I said, those are the toughest cases because I think you need more evidence. You need documentation. How is your cancer different than the bell curve? Are you younger than normal? Is your case more severe than the average case? Is there some anomaly of your condition that sets you apart in a rare subset? That could help. If that doesn't apply to you, that doesn't mean that it's a dead in the water case. Maybe you have a different situation. That kind of thing doesn't apply to you. You are a man in your 50s and you have heart disease. Those are rattle off. There are some things that are just common. You fit that mold. If you are going to get it, you are the poster child for getting that condition. That's okay. There are other things that could be at play. Your specialist could have ruled out all other causes. So where did it come from could be your thing. And that takes not necessarily nexus letters from your doctors. That just takes them looking at those documents, looking at the trail of evidence to say, they did X, Y, and Z, which means it's ruled all of these things out. And that means, where else did it come from? And then you have the combined evidence of the very specific detail. And this is where I said it matters not listening to people tell you do this, don't do that. I had a conversation not too long ago with a veteran who gave us a lot of those details, better than I've ever seen anyone in the history of ever doing these cases. This veteran had taken the time and he laid out exactly what he was doing on that base. Look, we were rolling around in the mud here, and this is
Mhm.
what was found here, and this is what we did in that mud, and this is what we were exposed to. So the AFFF stuff, I
Yes.
was a firefighter. Everyone gets training on a ship. We were part of, we had to receive this training. So we got exposed to AFFF. But those details matter. If you can show me a picture of you covered in it, and we did this and I did this for years, and every year you can quantify that.
Yes.
So it matters. If you're like, yeah, I was on a ship and I had this training, or I was on this base and they found asbestos, you're not likely going to have all those extenuating factors unless you fit into another category, like
Yes.
my cancer is more severe than the average. I have something different. So it's just like everything else, it's unique. Every veteran is different. Every case is different, but exposure cases are on top of that much harder because
Yes.
you have to have those details. You have to have something that matters, because what the research shows, I rarely blanket things over. I'm going to blanket cover this. What the research shows is it's length of exposure, time of exposure. The people who were exposed to this AFF foam,
Yes.
they did that for large quantities for large periods of time in the research studies. I'm talking about what the research supports. Yes. So when you're looking at a lot of these exposure cases, when you get down into it, what you're finding is that they take a population that is like doused in the stuff. Same thing with anything else. Those research studies are based on, how do we prove this one question and this one connection? We want our sample population to be, if you understand medical research, we want our sample population to be as pure as possible, which means if we're talking about exposure to black lung patients from West Virginia in the mine, your study is going to have a pure population who spent decades in the mine. And that's who they want to know if they have this cancer, because they're going to get that purity of less impacting
versus someone there for like 2 days, for example.
So that's what we're stuck with these exposure cases. And it's hard to explain to people that I believe you might be right, but we can't prove it, because you have to have not just one fact, you have to have a lot of things line up for it to be true. And when you base it off of that research study, I found this research study, I get them all the time.
This golden ticket.
When you look at who they studied, maybe they studied women and you're a man. Maybe they studied children and you're older.
Yes.
Maybe they studied that ideal population to get that pure result. And that doesn't mean we can't use the study. It just means it's not a silver bullet.
Correct.
It's not the only thing. So that's what's really difficult in these cases. And it takes time. It takes research time to catch up. And so it's very hard on people. Of those, I think a lot of those end up at the VA Board of Appeals. So if you come in expecting a quick result, a quick answer on an exposure case, you're not going to get it. And another key tip for people looking to validate companies that are working with them, if they just don't want to get into the hard work, you might want to get that hair on the back of your neck should be raised up. If you can't take the hard work, explain to me why we can't help you with this condition or this case. It's likely because they don't want to, because it's not easy. Hanging fruit. They only do increases only. So you're going to trust your money and your time and your evidence and your case to someone who's only willing to do the fast and easy. To me, that just seems like a red flag. The fast and easy. Now, that doesn't mean, what if you don't have a case? They should be able to explain it to you. They should be able to say, well, it's because you don't have X, Y, and Z, and this matters. And if you can't, because you may not be able to, you know what you do? You send them to me. I look at their records and I medically explain why it is. You say, I don't know, because I'm not a medical expert.
Exactly.
And then I say no, because here are the factors and reasons why. You don't just straight out say, no, we don't do exposure cases.
Correct.
But there are people out there who'd say that.
For sure. And I think also it empowers the veteran to understand why they're doing something or why they're not doing something. Because what I don't want someone to do also is, to your point, this is a very emotionally taxing process of going through a VA claim on average. There are anomalies. There are one-time goes and have no hiccups. And it was a great experience for them. They said all these things and it just happened. Good. Others are battling things for decades. Others have been through the ringer. And to get your hopes up because you read on a forum or saw a video that said this can work this way, I don't want veterans to hold out for false hope and be led on, because that then leads to desperation, which then leads to them being taken advantage of, which then leads to true predatory practices that happen in the space where someone's going to tell you what you want to hear and make you pay them for something,
Mhm.
it's not going to solve your problem. And then you're thinking that the system's against you, when arguably your argument was never going to succeed because it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And no one explained it to you. Some just said no, while maybe others said, sure, for a fee, we'll write whatever you want.
Now, can you do this yourself? A lot of times, yes. I see cases all the time. I see people posting online a lot. I've seen some this past week. I was looking at someone posed a question about Nexus letter companies, and I don't always comment on them. A lot of times I'll read them just to see what's out there in the space.
Yeah.
I want to see what people are getting told. I want to see what advice people are getting. So there are some things on Facebook that I belong to. I may never comment, but I'm looking at some of that just to see what advice people give. And I have seen, in last week, I saw a perfect case where someone, don't go to private companies, and there's that blanket statement, generic, don't use companies, do it yourself, get your doctor, don't pay for anything ever. These are short statements that scare people, but they don't actually explain the behind the scenes of why they're saying that. They may have a valid reason, but I saw someone post this week and actually have a really good, I did it myself, and this is what I did. I went and I researched and I became an expert in my condition. I learned all of the research that's out there. I organized it into a binder and validated that everything applied to me. I got my medical records and went to my doctor and I made sure all my stuff was documented. And I talked to them about this. I have this documented for how it affected my life. And I pulled all this together and I organized my file, and they spent all of this time. And it's a lot of work. And even just reading the post sounded exhausting. I'm like, yes, I see you. I didn't say anything, but I'm like in my house in my pajamas going, I see you. Yes, you did it. You did the work. You understand how hard it is and how much is involved in getting from here to there yourself.
Yes.
And not everybody's willing to do it. And that's okay. You don't have to do all of that if you don't want to, but you may need outside help if you're not willing to do that. Now, it sucks. I'm sorry. It sucks that it requires that level of work to get your VA disability
For
claim.
sure.
It's the system we're living in, though. It's a system we're working with. It's not perfect, but this is what it requires. So yes, can you do it yourself?
For sure.
Absolutely. Do you need to? Not necessarily. Did you have to do it for every claim? No. It's a personal choice if you choose to utilize somebody to help you with pieces and parts of it that you don't want to do all of that work for. But don't think for a second it's fast or easy.
But not at all. To be successful, even to that point, just because that person had that ability to do that, that doesn't mean someone else is going to have the same ability to do that thing. And to a good degree, it becomes very dismissive, because my problem also is, can I rotate the tires of my vehicle? Arguably, yes. Do I choose to do that? No. Do I trust someone with better experience to do that thing? Yes. I'd rather them do that, who have an experience and safety and all the things. And it doesn't mean that I'm less than because I don't do that thing. I think sometimes it comes across that way of, well, you're not very smart or you're dumb. It's like, no, it's a different skill set and you don't have it. That's why we go to different places. I can cook to a good degree, but I don't brand myself to be a chef. So I can go to a restaurant and appreciate that meal made that I, quite frankly, cannot replicate to that level. It happens everywhere. So to your point, yes, some people can do this, but also the situation they're in, the complexities of their case, the gaps in care, the care they have, the condition they're arguing, all those factors are a part of, for that one instance where that gentleman or lady did it correctly, there's dozens of others where it did not go the way they wanted. They were denied. And in turn, the argument is, I did try it on my own. And I went and put things in binders and did the research, and the system still denied me. At that point, white flag, I need to get expert support.
Exactly.